All right, today we're jumping into a really fascinating and, let's be honest, pretty contentious topic. We're going to explore a mystical interpretation of Jesus Christ that comes from an ancient tradition in southern India. We'll look at this unique viewpoint, and then we'll break down exactly why Orthodox Christianity sees it as a fundamental fabrication of its most central figure. So let's just start with the big question that gets this whole conversation started. Could Jesus have actually been an enlightened yogi? I mean, just asking that question opens up this huge theological divide between two very different ways of understanding who he was and what his mission was all about.
Okay, so where does this kind of alternative view of Jesus even come from? Let's dig into the Siddhar perspective.
This view comes from a group called the Tamil Siddhars. Now, these are an ancient lineage of mystics, yogis and saints from southern India. Their path is all about intense self-mastery, a deep spiritual discipline focused on achieving enlightenment through your own inner journey.
Now, this is a really key term you gotta understand. Kanana Siddhar. It basically translates to a Siddhar of supreme knowledge. In their tradition, this is the highest possible honor. It's reserved for a fully realized spiritual master, someone who comes to bring light to humanity. And, well, this is exactly how they see Jesus.
So how does this actually play out? Well, the Siddharhog view completely reinterprets Jesus, who they call Isa. For them, he isn't the unique Son of God. No, he's one of many divine teachers. His miracles, those aren't signs of unique divinity, but of supreme self-mastery, something they call siddhis. And the crucifixion, that wasn't for the atonement of sin. It was a profound spiritual trial. It's all part of this universal truth that they believe connects every religion.
So, as you can probably tell, this creates two wildly different portraits of Christ. Let's put them side by side so we can really see the conflict here.
This table just lays it all out so clearly. On one side, you have the biblical Christ, the unique Son of God, whose mission was to atone for humanity's sin, whose resurrection was a literal, physical victory over death, and salvation is a free gift of grace. But then you look at the other side, the Siddhartha Christ, an enlightened master, sure, but one among many. His goal was teaching self-mastery. His resurrection, symbolic of yogic achievement, and the path to salvation is through your own effort. These two portraits are, at their core, just fundamentally incompatible.
And we're not talking about minor disagreements. From an Orthodox Christian perspective, this isn't just a different take. It's a doctrinal conflict that strikes right at the very heart of the entire faith.
And this leads us to the core argument of the source material we're looking at. The Siddhar view isn't seen as just a valid alternative interpretation. It's viewed as a fabrication, a misappropriation of the biblical figure of Jesus. The argument is that this view creates an entirely new character who just happens to share the same name, but, well, not much else.
This quote from the source really captures the whole issue. The big concern is that by blending these concepts, the Siddhar's view as, quote, depriving the biblical Jesus of his unique and transcendent reality. In other words, it takes away everything that, for Christians, makes him who he is. The source material really breaks this down into four key theological errors. First up is reduction, shrinking Jesus down to just another enlightened master, which denies his unique divinity. Second is denial, completely rejecting the idea of atonement, which removes the core purpose of his death on the cross. Third is syncretism, this blending of totally incompatible beliefs, which is seen as watering down the Christian message. And finally, there's the replacement of salvation by grace with a system of self-mastery, which completely changes the path to God.
So, why does all this theological debate really matter? What are the real-world stakes of believing one version over the other? For Orthodox Christianity, the stakes are incredibly high. This reinterpretation doesn't just offer a different flavor. It's seen as completely misrepresenting Jesus' core identity and his mission. It basically reduces the gospel, the good news of salvation through grace, into a kind of generic spiritual self-help program. The message of receiving a free gift gets replaced with a myth where you have to earn your own way. And that, they argue, completely obscures what Christians believe is the one unique path to salvation.
And all this brings us to our final and, I think, most critical question. It's one that goes way beyond this specific debate. It really asks us to think about the line between honoring different perspectives and fundamentally changing a core message. At what point does a new interpretation stop being an interpretation and just become a misrepresentation? It's a tough question and definitely one worth thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.